Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to a freshly minted edition of GTF. Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia. A couple of programming notes. Today at 2 p.m., Bar Down Talking Hockey. It's the Stanley Cup playoffs. There's no better postseason than NHL hockey. Yes, even better than the NFL. That's my opinion. But if you want to talk some hockey with the guys, join them here live at 2 p.m. And then later today, it's the Mac and Reed Show at 6. And then after that, it is a special edition of Somebody Big Just Died. Bill Walton, the famous basketball player and basketball announcer and just entertainer, will be eulogized by the great Mike North and Joey Mandel. All right, let me bring in my man, Greg Gabriel. Greg, how are you? How was your Memorial Day?
Good. You know, you're talking about the NHL, and I'm an NHL fan because I'm a Buffalo Sabres fan.
Mm-hmm.
People around here won't like that because they'd rather I like the Blackhawks. But anyway, playoff hockey is like a whole different world than regular season hockey.
Really,
you put on a regular season game and then a playoff game, it's like no comparison between the two games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, and the regular season that was shortened by a strike, I think it was a 2010 season, was the best season because every regular season game felt like a playoff game because it was only like a 40-game season. And so there was, much more pressure to win and get into the playoffs. I think, for the most part, other than football, most of the professional sports leagues, the seasons are too long. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I thought that for a long time. Like, why does baseball need 162 games other than make money?
Yeah, right. And now they've half the teams make the playoffs. It's even makes it even more superfluous that they play so long. What about football? Do you think we're going to see an 18-game regular season soon?
I think it's coming, but it's probably still minimum 2 years away and maybe more than that because the Players Association is going to fight it. But what's interesting, though, and I think it leads up to that potential 18-game season, is what the Players Association came out with yesterday. What they're trying to do is really take away the spring portion of the off-season program and then go into camp a lot earlier.
Mm-hmm. So you'd have free agency, you'd have the NFL draft, and then you've had a long off period, and then camp would start probably in June, late June, or something like that.
You probably got to increase camp by about 3 weeks.
Okay.
So probably right after the 4th of July, unless you're playing in the Hall of Fame game. And that would make up for the off-season program. The problem is, and part of the off-season program is, before you even start doing on-the-field work, you're 2 weeks in the weight room.
Yeah. Okay.
So guys are strictly doing conditioning stuff. Then and the conditioning stuff goes up all the way through the end of OTA. So that's, they're 2.5 weeks from now when the Bears off-season program ends, somewhere around 16th, 17th of June. And then, with this change, you're not going to have that workout time. So you're putting a lot of onus on each individual player to work out. Now, a lot of these guys who don't participate in the off-season program, they take excellent care of themselves. It's a lazy guy that you have to be concerned about. And, you maybe have to babysit him a little bit. And I'm just wondering if they do this, if they'll still have the unofficial, or what's the right word I want, just have the weightlifting sessions without the
mandatory.
The non-mandatory, and just have, they can come in, they're under the guidance of the strength coach, but it's at their own time or whatever. The thing is that a lot of these guys get paid for this. They're getting paid. I forgot what the off-season pay is now. It has nothing to do with their contract, but there are clauses in the contract, or some contracts that give them bonuses for participating in the off-season program. It could be $100,000, could be as much as $500,000. But then just for the rookies and your everyday ordinary player, he's making a few $100s a week, if not more than that, attend these sessions. But you've got to be at a minimum 3 out of the 4 sessions per week to get paid.
Yeah.
2 when you're not getting paid.
DJ Moore was recently asked, why are you here? And he said the first thing out of his mouth was $200,000. That's why I'm here. So that was great. Chris Watts says, I always found the NFL season too short. The rugby season over in the UK is 20 plus games long, and they do it without equipment. What do you think?
Well, I don't think, and I love rugby, and I've had some friends that have played rugby back home. And hell, one friend of mine who left us just a year and a half ago, he played until he was 63 years old and was damn good at it in the 60s. Wow. So, but you don't take the beating that you take in football. Yeah, there's contact, and you can have injuries, especially head injuries. But you're still not taking that beating that you're taking in a football game.
Yeah, interesting. All right, well, let's talk about the Chicago Bears. That we're dedicating this show to looking at the tight ends and the offensive linemen that are currently scheduled to be in camp. And so I've put together a list. Let's start with the tight ends. What do you say?
Okay.
All right, so the tight ends, of course, are led by our Cole Kmet and Brendan Bates, Stephen Carlson, Gerald Everett, the veteran, Thomas Sweeney. This looks like a group that doesn't have a lot of competition, Greg, because Bates is a rookie. Carlson is a journeyman. And Sweeney is a journeyman, too. 1 career touchdown that he scored for the Bills. I got to believe that Mr. Poles will be looking at the waiver wire for more tight ends to invite to camp.
I might not agree with you on that one.
Okay.
Obviously, Kmet and Everett are 1-2, with Kmet being the Y and Everett being the FH, however you want to call it, depending on the offensive scheme. He's the move tight end. Then you need a third guy, and the third guy's really got to be able to do a little bit of both, but probably more Y than H. And actually, Tommy Sweeney, being, he played for Buffalo, so I know his game. He's a pretty darn good blocker. So from that standpoint, he would fit. He's a decent athlete. He's not a burner or anything like that. He would fit. And then Bates hardly ever caught the ball at Kentucky, but he's a very, very good athlete, and he's a strong blocker. So I think you're going to use the off-season program to really see what you have in him as far as being a receiver. So you have that answer. So then if they don't think he can be reliable as a receiver, I know Sweeney, but if they don't think Bates can be reliable as a receiver going into training camp or getting into the regular season, then yeah, you might be right, and they could bring in another veteran. But the third guy, like I said, has got to be a combination of being able to play both positions. And so right now I would say that's a battle between Bates and Sweeney. And Carlson would be the odd man out, could end up on the practice squad again. The number's 5. Could it get to 6? Yeah, it could. Wasn't there one camp when they had, at this time of the year, they had 7 or 8?
I thought it was 9 or 10.
Yeah, it might have been. There was a hell of a lot. I don't know if they went to camp with that many, though.
Okay.
At this time of the year, yeah, they had that many. And by the way, I was thinking of this the other day. Do you know we're hitting 4 years on this show this summer?
Wow, look at that. I'll get you a watch. Timex. I love it.
A Rolex?
Yeah, one of those that I find over on 26th Street. One of the things that I saw about Bates is that he had 4 receptions this past season, and but they were all long receptions. He had a 30-yarder, excuse me, in UK's season opening win over Ball State, and a 33-yarder in a loss to Alabama. For his career, he's got 26 receptions, 272 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You know, this guy kind of, you know, I might have to speculate that perhaps they think of him as a diamond in the rough, because he certainly doesn't have prolific numbers, you know, and to kind of count on him as a potential tight end on your squad, you've got to be taking a leap of faith there.
Well, you're looking at traits. And remember when he tested very, very well. Now, if you go back and you look at Kentucky tape from during the year, which I did because I didn't know much about this guy, and they used 3 tight ends. He was predominantly the Y. And so he wasn't, and would come out sometimes on passing downs. So he wasn't the pass catching tight end. He was the blocking tight end. And so as a blocker, he did a pretty good job. And he's not a big guy. He's only like, I think on his pro days, 245, 246, something like that. But he blocks really well for a guy that isn't that big. But when you look at the athleticism, and I'm sure they threw to him a lot on the pro day, you might have found out a little bit about his hands. But I'll go back to what I just said a couple minutes ago. What he does during this month-long off-season program, you know, from the middle of May to the middle of June, that's going to tell the hierarchy at Hallis Hall what they have with him. You can find out more with tight ends, receivers, and defensive backs than you can at any other position. And the running backs. It's just, you know, the linemen on both sides of the ball, you aren't finding out anything except what kind of athlete they are.
Yeah. Okay. Now, as for Tommy Sweeney, he has seen a lot of action. When he was with Buffalo, he started only 4 games, but he played in a total of 24 games over at Buffalo, had a career 18 receptions, 165 yards, scored a touchdown, which I actually found on YouTube, and it was a goal line play. They faked the handoff, and he was the tight end on the left and ran to the back of the end zone and found himself wide open for a touchdown pass. So he's got the skills to score. He's got the skills to block. Like you said, he is a good blocker. This is a guy that I would be shocked if he's not the number 3 tight end. But like you said, you got to prove it in camp.
Yeah, and you know, he had some injury history too. And then last year, you know, there's a few people from Buffalo are with the Giants now, including the head coach, Brian DeBall. The Giants signed him, and something happened, and he was released with a non-football injury or something, or non-football illness, something along that line. So what it exactly was, I don't know, but they obviously, between Joe Shea, the general manager, and Brian Daboll, they wanted him on their team, and it just didn't work out. Bears brought him in this year, but he's going to be on a short leash because of his history. So I think this other guy, Bates from Kentucky, is going to be interesting to watch in camp. And like I say, they might make their mind up about him before they even get to camp. And you'll know that if they do what you said. They could go out and sign a veteran before camp starts. But I haven't even looked at the veteran list to see what's out there, you know, if there's anything out there.
I took a quick look at it, Greg, and I got to tell you, there isn't much. According to Spotrac, there's 13 guys that have played in the NFL before who are currently free agents. The biggest name is Logan Thomas, who made $8 million last season. He's in his 8th year. He's 32 years old. He's going to be 33 very soon.
Had a ton of injuries.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was a quarterback in college. And made a very good transition to being the move tight end. Not much of a blocker, great athlete, but injuries have cut him down, and that's why he's not in the league right now.
Well, the next guy that's available, unfortunately, he's 40 years old, but he had a really good season with the Bears last season. That's Mercedes Lewis, who made $2 million last year. Why? I'm surprised he isn't in camp, or maybe they're just waiting. Let him enjoy his offseason.
Well, it would be just like last year. You ready now? Yep. Okay. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And to me,
he's a pro. He knows what he's got to do to prepare.
Yeah.
Now, there's a question: does he even want to play?
Right.
And they're going to know that.
And if he hasn't submitted his retirement papers to the NFL, there's at least that a little bit of hope that he might want to play another year before hanging them up. And I would imagine, at least I remember hearing him in interviews talking about how much he liked the Bears organization, how much he liked being around the younger guys and so forth, and working with Cole. And so I would think that the situation would be even more attractive this season for him to play his final season, although he may want to wait and see if a more truer Super Bowl contender for this season will give him a call, because he would probably like to go out of the ring.
The other thing is, too, Aldo, is that he was a gutsy guy. He played for Gutsy in Green Bay. So that was the connection. And now Gutsy's gone. Now, he claims he liked the organization. He played well here. He played well for what he was asked to do, and that's be a blocker. And he got a lot of reps of being a blocker. Only got thrown to a few times. But for an older guy, he was pretty damn good. Now, I'll tell you how old he is, and I said this last year. I took that dude out to dinner when he made his visit on a 30.
Wow.
So, and a really, really nice guy.
That's funny.
To Fleming Steakhouse in Lincolnshire.
Yeah. Wow. How about that? A great place.
And the other guy who was there, and now I can't think of his name, works for the NFL Network, the short running back from UCLA. So we had two UCLA guys.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. Must have been a nice dinner at Fleming's too. All right. So that's how the tight ends are looking. I got to believe that Poles isn't done with player acquisition. I am, really shocked that there's only, how many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we'll see. There's more player movement ahead. Now, before we talk about the offensive lineman, we've got a couple of questions here that I'd like for you to address before we get on to a whole new subject. And folks, if you can fire offensive line questions, that will help. But this one from Chris is something that's been on the minds of a lot of people on social media. Greg, what are your thoughts on Caleb Williams having a hard time in the OTAs? I think Caleb will be fine, and an overreaction by the clickbait crowd.
I already mentioned it last week. First of all, it's expected.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and you don't know how he's done every practice because nobody's allowed in. Last Thursday, the media was allowed in. He did not have a good day. Right. So what? No big deal. There's not a quarterback in the league who, as a rookie, didn't struggle in these types of practices.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're there for. And now what we don't know, and what could very well be going on, I know if I was the coach, I might want to do this, is really have the defense throw everything at them. Mm-hmm. Let them see it now. So, don't hold back anything. Do blitzes, do other stuff so he gets confused as hell and he can get more comfortable with seeing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it was interesting when Kevin Byard had his press conference last week and he was asked about Caleb's tough day. He goes, well, to be honest with you, yesterday the offense kind of carved us up about a bit. So he had a good day and he had a bad day, and that's how things go for rookies. And then he also said something that I was going to ask you about. He said, of course, we had MAs. He didn't say MIAs. What do you know what MAs stands for? Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Byard seems like a great veteran to have on this team. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about him a lot more when we cover the defensive backs. Cheers to you too, Chris. Good friend from Leeds. He's co-host of the Barfly Tailgate Show. Let's move on to the offensive linemen. This is a really interesting group of guys, and we'll start with a guy whose name I've been practicing how to pronounce. It is Karan Amagaji. Karan Amagaji. I know I got
and I
to
was saying it wrong too. I was saying Amagadaji.
Yeah.
I was adding a syllable in there. But we don't want to start with Quran though, because we want to start with the projected starters, which would be left tackle Braxton Jones, left guard Tevin Jenkins, right guard Nate Davis, right tackle Darnell Wright. Then the center job is a competition between Ryan Bates and Shelton.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Coleman Shelton knows the scheme. He's played in the scheme, but he's not as big or as strong. He started pretty much every game the last 2 years for the Rams, played pretty good football. Bates has played guard and center, was not a starter last year, was a starter 2 previous years for Buffalo. And he has predominantly been a guard, but their backup center played a lot of center in the preseason, and that's the position that the Bears signed him for now, and what they signed him for to the offer sheet 2 years ago is because they wanted that bigger, very athletic center, because in this outside zone scheme they could ask their center to pull, get out in space, and that's what this guy can do. He can do it really well. So I think it'll be a very interesting battle. Shelton probably has, and I haven't seen a practice, I'm just from a standpoint of knowing and understanding the offense, might have a little bit of a lead right now because it's not new to him, where it is new to Ryan Bates. But the real battle really is going to, right now, it's the mental part, seeing what kind of athlete you are when you get to linemen. Once they get into camp, at the end of July, so it's really almost about a month from now, 4 weeks from now, then you're going to see the physical part of the game, and then you'll find out who's going to be the real starter. But I think, those 6 guys are definitely on the team. Then there's, depending on how many people you keep, most teams prefer to keep 8. In recent years, some teams have kept 9. So now you've got your backup situations. Amagadeji is going to be one of them. He's a 3rd-round pick, and it was our first pick on day 2. That's a given. Okay, he's just doing mental stuff right now because he's not ready to do the physical part of the game yet, but he's supposed to be ready at camp. His tape was really good, but it's also against Ivy Leaguers. So he's not playing against people like if he was in the Big 10 or the Big 12 or something like that, or even a top 1AA conference, say North Dakota State, South Dakota State, those types of schools. The Ivy League is really a lower level FCS program or level of comp, in my opinion, but they're all smart. They're tough. They just don't, it's not a very fast league. But again, you watch the tape, he totally dominated the players he was at. It was like he was a man among boys. I think he's capable of playing tackle or guard. Mm-hmm. And this is where we've talked about this a little bit before. And I realize I'm throwing a dart at the wall here, but I think it's a worthwhile topic of discussion. And that is, what's the future of Tevin Jenkins? Tevin is going into, this is his contract year. So it's his 4th year on his rookie contract. And if you look at what guards got this spring in free agency, they got some big, big money. Now, when Tevin's on, he's as good as there is. More so as a run blocker than a pass blocker. I think he's inconsistent as a pass blocker. He's a dominant run blocker. But he's also missed, and I should have done the stat before we started the show. He has missed a ton of football, something like 18 games in his first 3 years. Missed a lot of football games. So are you going to pay a guy that has such poor durability? And I think you got to use that term, because he has not played a full season since he's been in the league, his first 3 years. So that the onus is on him this year to play in every game. And not only play in every game, but play good. So if that doesn't happen, then, and we're jumping the gun here a little bit, I realize that, but come free agency next year, they may not offer him a contract and let him walk. And he's going to get a good contract, which means, that potentially, depending what the Bears do in free agency next year, potentially could be a comp coming back here. And so it just wouldn't shock me. And another reason is he wasn't drafted by this regime. And we've seen how they treat players they didn't draft. They just let them go out the door. So see you later. It's been nice knowing you. So I think that it's a worthwhile discussion. And if that happens, wouldn't shock me if Amagaji ended up at that spot a year from now, or you could move Braxton Jones in there. One or the other, whoever, the coaching staff and the front office feels is the better of the two. But when you look at their body, Amagaji's got more ass to him. He's bigger in the lower body. And when you're playing guard, you're playing 320, 330, 340-pound guys. So you might want that bigger body inside than a tackle. And, I'm a Braxton Jones fan. So, and I've said it 1,000 times here, the guy's got natural traits that very few tackles in this league have. The way his athleticism, his length, as good as the length he has, Amagaji's got better length. Like Braxton's got 35.5-inch arms. Amagaji's got over 36-inch arms.
That's amazing.
Both those guys can tie their shoes without bending over. That's how long their arms are.
That's awesome.
They got some really long arms. But you have a very, very athletic left side of the line, regardless of how they line them up. Who's at guard, who's at tackle. So I think that's a feasibility. Fans are going to have a big question mark on Nate Davis going into this year, rightfully so. He didn't live up to the press clippings when he got signed a year ago, but in my opinion, he deserves a pass, should get a pass. He was very close to his mom. He was missing a lot of the offseason program because his mom was really ill. She ended up dying in camp. And that was the reason why everything was going on. The Bears didn't put it out, nor did they need to put it out.
Right.
It was none of our business. But we found out after the fact. I'm hoping that he reverts back to the player he was in 2022 when he was with Tennessee. But it's going to be on him. He's got to. Regardless if you give him a pass or not, he's still got to become that player that he was. If he's not, you got a problem. Not a problem because you got other guys that can step in. It could be a problem on what you're going to do going forward after this year. Do you move on from him? Now, they signed a couple guys in free agency. One was Jake Curran, who was with Seattle, played for the Shane Waldron in Seattle. I think he's got 9 starts at Seattle between guard and tackle. Mostly as a backup. He was a free agent coming out of college, but he has 9 starts in 3 seasons at Seattle, and he's capable of playing 2 positions. The other guy is Matt Pryor, who has 24 starts between Philadelphia and Indianapolis And he started at guard, both tackles and guard in his career in those 24 starts. So I think with Indy 2 years ago, he had 4 starts at left tackle, 1 at left guard, and then like 4 at right guard or something. But I looked it up before, but 24 overall starts. So he's got experience.
Mm-hmm.
The guy and the real interesting interior player to me is Tyree Carter, because he was a guy that, had to play because of what was going on with Nate Davis, and Davis was injured in this part of the early season last year. Carter was starting at right guard, and Carter played pretty good. Then at the end of the year, he wasn't even dressing. So, what happened? And nobody's given us the answer. I don't know if anybody's ever asked the question. But for some reason, it seems like he's gone from a starter and a favorite as a backup to a guy that wasn't even dressing the last few games of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's got to be concerning. But is it something that he can overcome? Or was there something else going on that we just don't know about? But I think this is a very pivotal year for him between the offseason and training camp, because the talent's there, and he may be as athletic as Braxton Jones is. This guy's even more athletic, and he's big and he's nasty. So, it'll be interesting to see how he plays or how things work out for him this year in camp. The guy who could be the odd man out is Larry Borum, who's been, pretty much of a mainstay and started a lot of games his first 2 years, not last year. And because of all the play time he accumulated, he got that, I don't know the exact terminology they use, but he got that incentive that goes into his contract because of the games. He had basically outplayed the contract. And so he's making just under $3.2 million this year instead of hit what his normal base would have been, which was about 1.3. So are the Bears going to keep a guy who's strictly a backup, can really only play right tackle, can't play left tackle, or struggles at left tackle, and keep a guy that's making $3.2 million? Personally, I can't see it happening. I think it's just too much to be paying a backup.
Well, we've got a question here about Theo Benedett, the 22 or 23-year-old guy that the Bears signed. Do you know anything about him?
Yeah, he's an interesting guy, but you got to remember this. Played college ball in Canada. Canadian college football's not much better than Division III football here.
Okay.
And so now he did play in the East-West game, not this past January, the January before. And then he decided to go back to school. He would not have been eligible to go back to school at a U.S. school, but the Canadian rules are different. And he went back. Now, he's got good size. He's 6'6.5", almost 6'7", about 310 pounds. He's very athletic. At his pro day, though, it came out, and I've said this 1,000 times, I never trust the measurement. His arm measurement was 32 inches. If he's only got 32-inch arms, personally, I don't think that's correct. And I got to go back. I'm going to have to get a hold of Galco, find out what his arms measured at the East-West 2 years ago, or actually last year. At 32 inches, he's not playing tackle. And he's tall and athletic and rangy, but you're not going to have a guy with 32-inch arms. And it was an even 32. It wasn't like 32 3/4. He's got to play inside. But I think regardless, I think he's somebody they like, but because of his background and the level of comp that he played against in Canada, and obviously different rules, then he's a practice squad guy this year. So this is his development year. And then next year he tries to challenge to make the squad. But from all I understand and what I've heard, the guy's a hell of an athlete. Really tests really, really well, can run good. His Vertical jump was something like 34, 35 inches, which for a lineman is unheard of. Real good long jump too, and he moves very, very well. It's just, who he's played against and the rules, on line play in Canadian football, the defensive line is off the ball a little bit. It's not like U.S. football where they're right across your face.
Right.
So actually gives a little bit of an advantage to the offensive lineman because he's got maybe an extra 2 feet of space, which he can react to the defensive lineman's movement. But I just, I think he's based on the money he got alone because they guaranteed some money. I think he's a lock to go on the practice squad. And just to go back a little bit, there's an offset. When you get guaranteed money like that, it carries over into your practice squad salary. So there is an offset, but they've already promised him the money. They've got an investment in with him. So I think it's a lock that he's around, claims them. And if somebody claims them, then they're claiming a partially guaranteed contract.
Regarding Benedette, the word is that he's been practicing at right guard, but he himself told Kevin Fishbane that, he knows that the easiest path for him to make the 53-man roster is for him to be proficient at all 5 positions. And so he says, I'm working at knowing all of the aspects of all 5 positions in my attempt to get to the team. But you're right. He looks to me like because of his athleticism, he looks to me like a player they're going to stash and help to develop because he probably is not ready for the NFL this season. I have a question for you that came to mind when you were talking about Braxton and Kiran and who might be the most athletic. So my question to you is, in this scheme, is it more valuable to have your most athletic guy in the inside than the outside, or is it the way it traditionally has been? Your most athletic, best blocker is your left tackle.
Well, your left tackle has to have that really good lateral agility, quick feet lateral agility, because he's got to be able to set wide and block wide speed and be able to recover back to the inside. So he's got to be athletic in that way. But in the Bears scheme, and you've seen it, is that they pull the tackles a lot and they get out in space. And so, not only they have to have some speed, but they have to have that ability to adjust on the move. Some of these guys, they're a little stiff, they're not athletic. So for them to hit a moving target, and sometimes, it's a linebacker or a defensive back, it can be difficult for them. But if you watch last year with Darnell Wright, and the last couple of years with Braxton, they do it really, really well.
They do.
But I'm just, I'm thinking out loud when I say Amagaji might be better off inside.
Sure.
Only because of the girth. He's a bigger man than Braxton is. And especially in the lower body. And now, so that allows him to anchor, which is Braxton's weak spot. I don't know if it's, he improved on it last year, and I expect him to improve more this year. But can he anchor against a 330-pound defensive tackle where Amagaji, again, looking at Ivy League tape, nobody moved him. Somebody got into him, and he just stonewalled him right there at the line of scrimmage. So, that's why I'm thinking that he may, if they decide to move on from Tevin Jenkins. Again, I admit I'm throwing a dart at the wall here. But I'm looking at, do they want to pay a guy that hadn't been durable?
Let's talk a little bit more about before we leave Braxton, Kenny wanted to know your opinion on Braxton, which you've already shared. He goes on to say, I think he had a tough start to the season last season with mental mistakes and injury, but fans underestimate how hard it can be to upgrade from his reliability. I totally agree with Kenny. This gets back to the Charles Leno argument. I thought fans were a little too rough on Charles. Yes, he made some mental mistakes. Yes, he got, he was on the bad part of highlights, where a defensive back would knock him back on his ass. But for the most part, the guy played average football, and it's difficult to find at least an average left tackle.
With Leno, above average. He got paid in Washington.
Exactly.
And, he was a starter in the league for 9 years or something like that.
Right.
You don't start that long in the league, and on top of that, very, very durable.
Mm-hmm.
You don't play that much in the league unless you're a pretty good player. His biggest negative is that he's not quite 6'4". At the combine, he was 6'0", 3'7". But he has long arms. He has over 34-inch arms. And he's got great feet. So he was able to overcome his lack of ideal height with the longer arms, and of course his great feet. Yeah, Braxton had some mental mistakes last year, probably more than he had as a rookie. But I'm going to go back to this. People around here expect perfection, and it's not the way the game's played.
That's right.
Watch the other teams and see what happens.
Thank you. That's what I keep telling people is if you want to disparage Charles Leno, take a look at some of the other left tackles in the NFL, and you will feel blessed that we had Charles Leno in Chicago for 6-7 years.
But we're talking, and I go back. Alt was the best tackle in this league. Alt is not now he's bigger. He's got more girth, but he's not anywhere close to the athlete that Braxton Jones is.
Yeah.
And Braxton Jones is a rare athlete for a left tackle in the league. There's very few tackles that have as much athleticism. That's what you go out and scout for. And they got this guy in fifth round or something like that. And so now, and I'm repeating myself from other shows, he went to one of the worst FCS level programs in the country. Southern Utah sucks. He didn't have great facilities, didn't have great coaching, didn't play on a good team, so he had to overcome all that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he came in as a rookie and played every single snap as a rookie. Last year, he had that neck injury and he missed 5 games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a lot of context to take in, when evaluating these players. OKC Bear Boy asks, Greg, thinking ahead, what is the cost on the Jones extension? Year 3 offseason is the year to extend it if you're going to do it. This is his 3rd season.
You do it next year.
Next year.
Yeah, it's not now. You can't. He's played 2 years. You cannot even think about doing it until after he completes his 3rd year in the league.
So how much do you think, my guess is probably if he has a good season this year, $10 to $12 million is what he should be offered.
Oh, he's going to get more than that.
Yeah, I guess so.
No, you're on the light side.
I'm living in the past.
Which also brings in the fact if they don't want to pay, if they don't want to pay Tevin, do they want to pay Braxton? But here's the difference: they drafted Braxton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they'd love to keep him, no doubt. OKC goes on to ask if Tevin gets the $19 million offer and walks, how important is maintaining the 3rd round comp pick? So I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Now, people get confused about this. So I'll probably end up explaining this 100 times between now.
That's right.
and the comp pick wouldn't be until the year after.
Mm-hmm.
Not next year's draft. The comp is not based on each individual player's contract. It's based on the total of gains versus losses. And if your gains are better than your losses contractually, then, and it's not numbers of players, it's really contractually with the money going out, then you're not getting anything. You've got to lose more than you picked up. And you take that all into consideration. So he could get, say he got $90 million. Oh, we're going to get a third round pick. But the Bears could turn around and sign $80 million in free agents. And it's going to, you're going to end up getting a 6th or 7th round pick then after you do the addition and subtraction part. Does that make sense how I said that?
I think it does. Absolutely.
So and I see this, who was it? Florio said, oh, so-and-so is expecting a 3rd round pick, for the one late. And I kept saying, no, it's way too early for that.
Right.
The
results.
Yeah, you got to take everything. And not only does the contract come into play, but what happens to that player next season? If the guy gets hurt in the first game or in preseason or even early in the season, doesn't play the rest of the year, you're shit out of luck. You're not getting anything, regardless of what the contract was, because playtime and honors come into it. So if he signs an average contract, but he gets to the Pro Bowl, now that ups the ante a little bit.
Yeah, good point. Nate Davis, you talked about him accurately, and shame on us who were quick to criticize him for not being in camp last season. And I agree with you 100%. It's none of our business what he's going through personally. And so the Bears, in my mind, had no obligation to let fans know that that's what's going on in his life. But I have a new concern. He is not at camp or wasn't at camp last week.
Last
Thursday.
And there's a lot of guys who weren't there last Thursday because there was no OTA on Friday and it was a holiday weekend and they got the hell out of Dodge.
Okay, so I understand that you're providing context there, which helps alleviate my concerns. My initial reaction was, wow, given that he missed so much time last year, wouldn't it have been great if he was there to show the Bears? And he needs to work too. It's not like he had a great season last year.
Right, no question. Now I go back to what Flu said, because he's never given his presser last week. Every single player has been here some.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, and it is voluntary.
Yes, that's big. And so I won't say anything else more about Nate Davis other than
DJ Moore wasn't there last week on Thursday either, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
He may have been because that was the press day, but there was a bunch of big names that were not there last Thursday.
Okay. The two guards on this team, the two projected starters, Tevin at left guard, excellent player as you described him, probably one of the best run blockers, average at pass blocking. Nate Davis also better at run blocking than pass blocking. But those two guys are a little bit of a question mark. So if for some reason game one they're down because of injury or whatever, who's starting at guard for this team?
Well, you're looking at Ja'Tyre Carter,
okay,
Jake Curhan, Matt Pryor, and maybe Amagaji.
Maybe the rookie.
But depending what happens with Amagaji at camp.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Carter's proven he can start and play well. Amagaji, 3rd round pick. They expect a lot out of him, but he's still coming from Yale. Now I'll say this. Braxton Jones played every snap as a rookie, and Southern Utah isn't as good as an Ivy League program. The Ivy League programs are good, just the level of competition sucks. They have good facilities, they get good coaching. Just, the people they play against aren't as good as some of these other leagues. But if you're going to compare where Braxton came from versus where Amagaji came from the better program.
Okay. I got another question here from the chat. Let me see if I can find it. Ho Ho Loco. There was a report saying that the Bears have two top 32 offensive tackles. They were rated 31 and 32 in this report. Is that a complimentary ranking or a slap in the face?
I take all that stuff and I just laugh at it. Who's putting it out, and what's the context? So, like when PFF has given Braxton Jones some pretty good grades over the year, but I think PFF's ability their analytics are very good. Their ability to evaluate is absolutely piss poor awful.
Yes.
Okay. And, there's players who have complained about it. They laugh at it. They go, if you're looking at PFF to try to get an idea of how good a player is, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Because, and to go back, remember we talked about it. They said Nate Davis gave up 9 pressures in one game. Remember we talked about that?
Yes.
Went through every single play. I've only been doing this, since 1981. He gave up 3.
Amazing.
And that was stretching it, giving up 3. They said he gave up 9. I said now he doesn't work at PFF anymore because he's working for an agency, so you don't see his tweets. But Brad Spielberger. And I said, Brad, can you explain to me how you guys grade? He couldn't even do it because nobody can. And then the people they got, who's doing it?
Exactly.
And here's the key part is that if you don't know exactly what that guy's being asked to do, how can you grade him correctly?
Yeah, that's the thing, and they got so much crap, for their instant grades that, immediately after the game.
Right after the game, they give you a guy, so-and-so graded 75. Yeah, really? It takes an offensive line coach 4 hours to do his guys.
Exactly. And the
game was over 15 minutes ago and you already got your grades out. Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
and then they started calling it, now these are our preliminary grades until we have time to take a closer look at them on Monday, when we have. So I say bullshit to that. The other thing that bugs me about PFF, and I subscribe to their premium service, and I keep wondering why I'm doing that. But because the thing that bothers me is that, and I agree with you that their analytics are good, but sometimes they are inconsistent. So I'll see in the analytics that this guy got 6 pressures, and then I read a story and the guy who's writing the story saying he got 4 pressures. Well, which is it? Is it the 4 or the 6? And rely on your own analytics. The writers should to make sure they're getting it right. So quality control over at PFF is something that I have a problem with.
Well, here's the thing is that the teams never put out their numbers.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
that's another thing, right?
Each coach is following the game. Each coach grades every one of his players. So when Simo's doing the offensive line, he's giving a plus and minus to every play. Sacks he gave up, pressures he gave up, all that. And the player gets all that. The head coach gets it. Ryan Poles probably gets it. Not probably, I'm sure he does. But they're never going to put that out publicly. Right. Nobody's business. It's PFF is for the fans, it's for fantasy football and everything else. But if you expect it to be reliable and accurate, that's just wishful thinking.
Not going to happen. All right. We've gone over the offensive linemen. We've gone over our tight ends. Let's finish up talking a little bit about what is going on this upcoming week with mandatory mini camp happening. So now we're expecting to see Nate Davis, everyone on the team. What happens?
Another 2 weeks, isn't it?
Or is that 2 weeks? I think it's next week, but I'll double check. Let me see.
They might have a week OTAs after. I mean, you can put the mini camp in whenever you want, but OTAs and mini camp are basically the exact same thing. but the mini camp is mandatory, where the OTAs are not. They're voluntary.
Okay. Let's see. According to Bears Wire, and this was written by Alyssa, so she does a great job over there. Let's see. Mandatory camp is in June, and it's from June 4th to 6th. So that's next week.
Yep. Okay. So then you're going to have another week of OTAs or 2 weeks of OTAs after that.
Right. So what happens at mandatory camp besides everybody having to be there? Are you installing or what is happening?
That's the same thing. You're doing the same thing you're doing in OTAs.
Okay.
Like I said, a minute ago, the difference is that mini camp is mandatory versus OTAs being voluntary. So everybody's got to be there. If he's not there, he's fined. If he wants to get fined, that's fine. But it comes out of his first paycheck.
But so then when is the next big cut down for NFL teams, that next influx of potential free agents that polls will be looking at and scouring that waiver wire for potential acquisitions? Isn't that
after Saturday?
After Saturday, post June 1st.
Yeah, you're probably Monday, which would be June 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
You might see guys, teams release guys, and the way it works. So if they're a vested vet, they're immediately go into free agency.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put a claim on them.
Okay, right. So they're available right away. So that brings me to this question. So when I look at this list of players and I see Doug Kramer Jr., who I believe is entering his third, it could be fourth season.
Third year. He was Brian Pace's first class.
Okay. So is this guy just a camp body at this point?
No, he's more in a camp body because he's been on the practice squad, but I think that's the ceiling.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think that's one of the reasons they brought in both Bates and Coleman Shelton, because they know that the other guy's just not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you bring in two centers, that's got to be a bad sign for you, Doug. And not to laugh. I mean, this is you're loving your passion.
Could he be a practice squad guy again? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't see him being on the 53. To me, the question is, do they keep 8 or 9 offensive linemen on the 53?
Mm-hmm. Because that is, one of the things that's interesting to me is you need to bring in bodies for camp. You need 90 guys. You need guys to practice against. And so in your history and your experience at working at the NFL, do you look at guys and say, okay, this guy is a camp body or whatever the phrase is?
You broke up and you froze for a second, so I didn't hear all your questions.
So in your experience in the National Football League, do you sometimes look at a player and say, this is simply a camp body?
Oh, yeah. But that your grade says that too. I mean, you've got that in your write-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would think if there is a cut next week, veteran cut next week that they like, that it's going to be somebody that they think is better than what they already have.
Mm-hmm.
So he's an upgrade at a certain position. I wrote up the receivers for Windy City the other day. And, I think there's your top 3 are excellent, obviously. But then your group after that, there's questions on them between Velus Jones and Tyler Scott and Dante Pettis and stuff. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they brought in another veteran wide receiver sometime between the end of OTAs and the beginning of training camp. Right. And there's still some decent guys up there. They're not going to want to spend any money, but just to really, I think part of it, let me back up a little. Part of it is going to be, how did Jones look? How did Tyler Scott look? How did Dante Pettis look? And then the interesting name to me is Freddie Swain, because Freddie Swain had some production at Seattle under Shane Waldron.
Right.
So, and one year he caught 26 passes. I think it was 2022. You know, so he's just, he's got decent size. He's a little over 6 feet. He's 190 pounds. Runs a 4.47 or something. So he's not driftwood. He's got the talent, and he's played for the offensive coordinator. I'm sure that's why he's here. So, but here's the Rome, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. Those are your top three, and you don't expect them to play special teams. Now, could Rome be used as a returner in some ways? Yeah, he could. Do they want to would be the big question. He's a decent punt returner at Washington, though he wasn't used that much. But your other guys, 4, 5, and 6, at least 2, and preferred all 3, have to contribute on special teams. Now, Velus Jones has done that. Hasn't always done a good job as a returner, but he has contributed on teams, and he has been on cover teams also. So is Tyler Scott. Dante Pettis is actually a pretty damn good cover guy on the punt team. So I don't know what Freddie Swain can do. I have to go back and look at 2022 tape from Seattle to see if he in fact played any teams at all. But it's really, really important that those backup guys do contribute, because their key to dressing on Sunday is being able to contribute on teams, regardless. I guess I'll put it this way. The guy who's a better special teams guy is going to beat out the more talented player if the more talented player can't play teams.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a problem with the Bears roster last season at the running back position, in that now I'm forgetting his name, the guy that came over from the Panthers.
No, he came from Seattle too. The running back?
Yeah.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, that guy, yeah. He couldn't play teams.
Couldn't. And so he was a good player.
That's why he didn't rest.
Right. That's exactly why. People have asked that question.
From Seattle is predominantly a special teams guy.
Travis Homer, right. Yeah. Deontay Foreman. Thank you, Sam Rush. Us old guys there having memory lapse issues.
It's all rolling in.
We would talk more about it, guys, but we've forgotten. We don't know what to say. All right, final couple of questions here. I have one based on something that you just said. Oh, wait a minute. I want to make sure to get this one in here, because this was interesting from Scottish Bear. He says, question with this new TV money coming in and getting bigger, and with the probably 18 game a season coming soon, can you see a day that the 53-man roster gets extended to a bigger squad number one day? I got to believe yes.
It's an interesting question, and I'm going to say I don't think so, because the practice squad is so big.
Okay.
You got 15 guys on the damn practice squad. So you're really 53 players. You got, 68 players. It's just, who you're going to have. Now, I'm a big advocate of, they allow you to dress 48 players. I think all 53 should be able to dress.
I agree.
But the league says, with the other team, team B might have 3 guys who aren't capable of playing. So what? That's their problem.
Yeah, right.
Put them on injured reserve.
I don't get that rule.
I felt that ever since day one when they instituted it. It used to be 46 players could dress, and now it's 48. And now next year they've changed the rule. You can bring up a quarterback every week, and he doesn't. With the practice squad, you only could bring a guy up like 3 times, and then you couldn't bring him up again, or you had to make him just active. Well, with a quarterback, if he's your third quarterback, He could be the 49th guy to dress, and he could be a practice squad guy, and you can elevate him every single week. And he doesn't have the same rules as the other guys do. But he can't play unless number 1 and number 2 are officially out of the game. And if 1 or 2 gets the thumbs up and can come back in the game, then that third guy has to sit again.
Yeah. Greg, before excuse me, before we went live, you mentioned to me the Bears documentary on their 1920 series.
Football Drive.
There you go. And how well that draft special, 30 minutes long, was, how well it was produced. Inside information. You talked a little bit about, you shared with me a story about Rome Odunze that I think you wanted to share here. Well,
there's two things. There's one that there was a lot of talk going in that, maybe they wanted to draft an offensive lineman with that first pick.
Right.
That wasn't the case. And there was nothing in that alleviated that. What came out in that, and they can edit it. I'm sure that Ryan Poles has the power of what's in there. What's, can have anything edited out. What came out was they got their number 1 and number 2 player, which means that Rome Odunze was the number 2 player on their board. And that goes back to what I've been saying all along. No 2 draft boards are alike.
That's right. And I love that moment when Kevin Warren came up to Ryan Poles and hugged him after the Rome Odunze pick and said, congratulations. I know that was hard for you, because he was going to trade up for Rome.
Oh, he was thinking of it.
Yes. But that's how much they wanted this guy. And he credited him with his patience and stuff. And I think Ian Cunningham, he looks like the sly fox.
Pulling the phone out of his hand. Put that phone down.
Exactly. He's going to be a good general manager in this league, Mr. Ian Cunningham. But you're going to have to give him time, just like Bears fans are giving Ryan Poles.
What's funny is that he was worried, and you always are. When you have a guy, you're fixated on a guy, and you want him. You always think somebody else is going to take him.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But I think all of us, it was like, well, he's going to be there. Are they going to take him?
Yeah.
I thought there was no question he was going to be there.
Yeah. You know what? At one point in the video, I think it's Poles that says to Ian, ask Ian, who are they going to take? The New York Giants. Rome, I think it's going to be Rome, he says. He wanted Rome so bad. He was paranoid.
They took Neighbors. And Neighbors, if you go back, Neighbors was wide receiver 1 on a lot of boards. So we don't know which ones, but we know that was the case. We know that Rome was obviously number 1 here, but we also know that Neighbors was number 1. And Harrison was number 1. Harrison was number 3 on some teams.
Yeah.
You
predicted. Like you predicted.
And so it was beauty's in the eye of the beholder. What are you looking for at the position? Part of it is character. I've heard stories that Neighbors did not do well in the interview here. Harrison, kind of shrugged off the whole pre-draft process.
Yeah.
To me, that didn't matter that much. I just looked at the tape, and we still got that. We never played it. But when you went back to back to back with Rome, Neighbors, and Harrison, Harrison wasn't the best guy.
Yeah.
There's things that he can do better.
Right.
Than some of the others, but the guy who got the most explosive guy, the guy who got the most separation, and the guy with the best run after was Neighbors.
Without a doubt. Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what Harrison does over at Arizona, and we can buy his jersey now after a long delay because of some contract issue with FanSided. Tim Willis, ask a good question now. Based on what we saw out of 1920, I think this question now is even more relevant than ever. Tim asked, Greg, is this the year the NFL forces the Bears to do Hard Knocks, arguably the most compelling team to host this show? And now, given that they've had this experience where they revealed so much on that 1920 mini documentary, it seems
they only
to me,
revealed, in fairness, they only revealed what they wanted to reveal.
well, of course, but that's usually the case with Hard Knocks too. The communications director sits down with the HBO people and says, no, don't show that. Okay, you can show this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I obviously the Bears fans want to see it, especially because Caleb's a rookie.
Right.
Okay. Now, and then who is it? They're doing Hard Knocks, a Hard Knocks that's going to start pretty soon. Yes. That basically takes them through the off season.
I think it's the Giants.
Is that the Giants? Yeah, the Giants.
Yeah.
So that knocks it down. They haven't announced who the preseason team is.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's 50-50, but you know, how much clout does George have against the league? What Ryan thinks too, and Flus, do they want some of that stuff exposed when they're, even though I think the viewing numbers would be tremendous because you've got the first pick in the draft and he is a quarterback. So that would help ratings. Yeah. I don't have the complete answer. I mean, I'm sure you're going to know within the next, you got to know within the next month. They're not going to tell you 2 weeks before camp that, and the next month takes you really to July 1st.
Right. And the production team needs to know as early as possible because they got to set up cameras on walls and meeting rooms and stuff.
They could have already decided and not.
We don't know, right? Yeah. The other thing, you know, and if I was responsible for that decision with the Chicago Bears, I would say not this year, guys. Let's do it next year. You've already got us going to Europe. We have a rookie quarterback, and we want him to focus on his job in this rookie year as opposed to, you know, having to talk to you guys because we know he'd be a main focus for you guys. It's just is not the right year from a team standpoint. We'd be happy to do it next year. That's how I would approach it.
Well, the only thing is, though, where I'd argue that a little bit is the Bears got the control to say you're not spending time with them.
Yes,
you're only going to, you know, they take you up through the preseason games. Maybe you give them a little time after a preseason game to say a few words or something like that. But during the week at practice, you know, you're showing them in practice. You're showing, you know, when they did the Chargers and Pep was there and Herbert, I think, was a rookie quarterback. You know, you didn't see. They weren't, if I recall correctly, they weren't talking to Herbert that much, but they had him in meetings. They had a camera in the meetings and focusing on him in practice. And I remember because Pep got a lot of airtime on that because he was the quarterback coach. But it's they could control, the team controls. I think it was Detroit. They had a lot of focus on the interaction with players and one of the coaches.
Yeah.
You know, last year. And then there was when they did Cleveland. When I first came here, Bob Wiley was the offensive line coach on Dick Duran's staff. And then Wiley, the year Cleveland did it, Wiley was the offensive line coach there. Wiley's a character. And so they did a lot on Wiley there.
Yeah, you know, that's what you want to do as a, you know, speaking from a producer standpoint. You want the biggest personalities, you want the most interesting stories. And with the Chicago Bears, you know, Caleb Williams is a brand. And so you want, you know, as an HBO producer would want access to Caleb. You want to have a mic on him every single practice. And that's just for a rookie coming in, and this team has playoff aspirations in his rookie year. No thanks. We'll do it another year from now. So anyway, I think that's it, Greg. We have had an
We're
excellent
not going to
show.
get a vote on that no matter what. So,
Yeah, that's right. So Tim,
sit back, relax, and see what happens.
yeah, I think that they could strong arm George to do that, but I think that
George might not have a choice. They might say, you're doing it.
Exactly. But I think that George has a good comeback. We're already going to Europe this year. What more, obstacles do you want? I got to start winning some football games.
Jacksonville goes to Europe twice every year.
Yeah, they're used to it now, but that's been consistently an underwhelming team. Maybe that's part of it.
But they go and they stay. I mean, they play back-to-back games there.
Yeah, which makes sense. That's a good thing. But I don't know how they're going to do that in Australia.
Is when they leave them.
Excuse me. Yes, I totally agree with that.
I'm a believer that you leave early and you spend time there. You get adjusted. I think the teams that leave late, and Buffalo left late last year, they get beat.
Yep, Bears and Raiders. They got beat. The Bears got beat against the Raiders. Matt Nagy made the decision to fly out on Friday. What? The Raiders were there on Monday. It's like, what are you doing?
I would think, Tuesday's your supposed day off.
Right.
Fly on Tuesday.
Thank you. Get there as quickly as possible. That way people can get acclimated to that European beer. It's quite potent. All right, Greg, you are the absolute best. I will talk to you very soon. In fact, I'll be talking to you after
next week. We can do Monday or two. We can go back to regular scheduled time.
Yeah, since mandatory camp starts on June 2nd, that's Sunday. So we'll have a lot to talk about on Monday.
They're doing it on a Sunday. I can't. Yeah. Maybe they're reporting on Sunday or something. I can't believe they're going to have a practice on Sunday.
You're absolutely right. It is Tuesday, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th. That's what I have on my.
Well, that would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the 4th, the 5th, and 6th.
No,
first is on Saturday. Second, third, 4th is Tuesday.
No, in my calendar says June 1st is Saturday. The second is Sunday.
Third is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Yes, exactly. So let's do a show on. Let's do it Tuesday. Whatever. We'll make up our minds. The best way.
There'll be sound bites beforehand. If they do it the way they do it with OTAs, there'll be sound bites in the morning.
Okay.
Before they go out. And then because I think they very rarely have anybody talking after practice.
Right. Yeah. So we'll plan accordingly. Look for us early next week. The best way to stay on top of that, you barflies, you followers of the Barroom Network, is to subscribe to the channel, and you will get updates on your devices. Thank you, Sam Rush. I hope you are well. Evie, I know now how to pronounce your name. And everyone else, thank you all for joining us live, and we'll talk to you all very soon. Bye-bye.
See you later. And Aldo, don't forget to help me out.
I got you, brother. Okay, bye-bye.
Later.